Commissioner Loman. Commissioner Bernie.
Present.
Commissioner Stevens. Commissioner Stevens.
Here.
Commissioner Parker.
Here.
Commissioner Wolfius. Commissioner Melcher. Here. Commissioner Korn.
Here.
All right, with that out of the way, this is the portion of our public hearing that if anybody wants to say anything that is not on our agenda for this evening, we welcome any public comment. All right. Moving on. Application LA 2101. This is a legislative amendment. LA 2101 consists of text amendments to the chapters 17.24 residential low density zone, 17.28 residential high density zone, and 17.30 medium density residential zone. The City of Sweet Home's Municipal Code. The proposed text amendments were identified by city staff based on feedback from the Planning Commission and City Council as a method for improving the quality of housing within the city. This proposal includes amendments to the following sections of Sweet Home Municipal Code 17.24, 17.24090, homes on individual lots, Sweet Home Municipal Code 17.28, 17.28090, homes on individual lots, and Sweet Home Municipal Code 17.3, 17.30.090, standards for homes on individual lots. So are we just reading this one in?
So at the last meeting, we read a letter from some feedback that we had received, and the result of that was that you all decided to continue this to today, and we are addressing the concerns with a new draft of the ordinance, plus an expanded staff report. And I can go ahead and read the expansion of the staff report at this time. So this is what was added. Municipalities are required to comply with statewide planning goals. Goal 10 addresses housing. This proposed ordinance interacts with Goal 10 only in that it affects housing types and could affect housing affordability. The city's comprehensive plan points to its housing needs analysis that was conducted in 2001. However, that document has not been updated since it was drafted and is of almost no beneficial use now, 20 years later. Efforts have been made to update both the city's comprehensive plan and housing needs analysis. However, despite years of attempts, funding has not been secured to accomplish this work. The city is fortunate, though, that it has much more available residential land within its urban growth boundary than many other cities of our population size. Staff has analyzed the proposed ordinance based on statewide Goal 10 and determined that the proposed change does not leave the city with less than adequate residential land supplies in the locations, types, and affordability ranges affected. First, location. The proposed ordinance does not include any changes to the location where housing of any type can be developed. This ordinance does not restrict the availability of housing based on location. Types. While the proposed ordinance is directed at manufactured homes, the only changes that it makes to the current development code are reasonable restrictions based on appearance and energy efficiency. This ordinance does not restrict the availability of housing based on type. Affordability. The proposed ordinance does impact the cost of manufactured homes in that it will require developers to select homes that comply with the ordinance and may prevent developers from placing older manufactured homes on lots within the city. This may result in an increase in development costs for manufactured homes. However, the energy efficiency offered by homes that meet the standards of this ordinance will lower the heating and cooling costs for these same homes. Staff believes that these costs balance each other out, and while there may be an impact to upfront housing costs from the proposed ordinance, the decrease in energy costs will result in monthly savings for the resident. This ordinance may affect the supply of housing based on affordability. Based on the Commission's conversation, we have two different versions of the ordinance. There's a version A and a version B. Both of them are updated from the version that was presented last time. The one update that they both share is under the exterior siding and finish portion. It's letter I now. It now reads, the exterior siding of the manufactured home must have wood or composite exterior siding and otherwise use the same materials as neighboring houses. So that was making it a bit more specific than the previous version. Version B includes a portion that talks about covered porch. It says it adds H, covered porch. The manufactured home must have a covered porch over the front door that is at least as wide and deep as the doorway is wide. I mentioned this to Commissioner Journey prior to the meeting. Staff doesn't recommend this version because the covered porch is not something that we would require of a stick-built home, but also because of the nature of manufactured homes is that you're not able to attach anything to them because they're an engineered, fully engineered unit. And so constructing anything that attaches to a manufactured home is difficult, if not impossible. And so that makes it much more burdensome on people who are purchasing a manufactured home to place on a lot, because if there was going to be a home that would meet that requirement, it would have to be designed from the beginning to be that way, which would result in a manufactured home having something protruding from it as it travels from the factory to the site. It's a big burden to place on something like that. My fear is that because that's an unusual requirement that most cities don't have, it would be something that would make us stick out and be more prone to legal challenge if we were to have something like that in our code.
So can I comment?
Yeah.
So I appreciate the research that you did, and I was not aware of the conditions that you just talked about regarding the covering of the front door. And one of my criteria for standards is what do other cities do? And clearly that's not evident. And so I would recommend to not approve version B, even though that was originally my idea. But with the added information that we've just listened to, it doesn't seem feasible.
Okay, so are we gonna go ahead and vote on that on
So-
version A versus B?
I would recommend that since this is a continuance of the previous public hearing, that you would open the public hearing and hear from anyone who wants to comment on this
Okay,
item.
so at this time, we'll open the public hearing for legislative amendment LA 2101 for public comment. Is there anyone that would wish to speak? Well, first of all, do any of our commissioners have any personal biases to this? Any ex parte information?
No.
All right, I'm spacing the last one because I don't have my book in front of me. So,
No conflicts.
any conflicts of interest? Thank you, Angela.
No.
It's been a long day. All right, so is there anybody that wishes to speak in favor of our legislative amendment? No. Anyone wishing to speak? Neutral testimony, not for or against? No. Does anyone wish to speak against the legislative amendment 2101? No. So we will close the public hearing for discussion amongst the commissioners at 6:46. There you go. Anybody like to make a motion to?
I'll make a motion that we approve legislative amendment LA 21-01, version A.
I second it.
All right, we have a motion and a second. And, oh,
Would you like to add to your motion that you recommend it to the city council for passage?
And recommend it to the city council for passage.
fantastic.
Just
Thank you.
covering our bases.
Absolutely. So at this time, I'll take it over to Angela for a roll call vote.
Commissioner Stevens,
Aye.
Commissioner Melcher,
Aye.
Commissioner Parker,
Aye.
Commissioner Corn,
Aye.
Commissioner Journey.
Aye.
6 ayes, no nays, and 2 absent.
All right, so moving on, our next order of business is diving into Article 1 of our 2021 Development Code updates. And I hope that Blair and Angela have had lots of water in front of them to drink. So we get to
So
read.
we're on I-16.
Yes, page
I-16.
I-16. That's after tab 3. I believe we ended with the definition of family, and so the next definition would be farming. Ready to start?
Sure.
All right, I'll start. And so feel free to stop if you have any comments, and we'll just keep on reading through. Farming, to engage in the cultivation of crops or the raising of animals. Farm use as defined in ORS 215.203, including non-farm uses authorized by ORS 215.213 and ORS 215.283. Fence, any permanent partition, structure, or gate erected as a dividing marker, barrier, or enclosure, including hedges or living bushes or shrubs, encircling either wholly or any portion of any area. Fence, site obscuring. A continuous fence, wall, evergreen planting, or combination thereof constructed and or planted so as to effectively screen the particular use from view. Fill, any act by which earth, sand, gravel, rock, or any other similar material is deposited, placed, pulled, or transported to raise the land to a higher level or grade. And I believe we're skipping the definitions that are in the ordinances that were more recently adopted. So these are from the flood hazard ordinance, the next couple, the next several. That brings us to floor area. The area of the building exclusive of porches and exterior stairs, which shall extend to the exterior faces of all walls. Floor area shall include all levels within a structure, including mezzanines and additional stories above the first floor, and including basements improved for regular human occupancy. Within a residential structure, floor area does not include garages or carports. Floor elevation, the height above mean sea level of the first floor of a building that is not a basement. Floor, habitable, any floor area intended to be used for residential living purposes, which includes working, sleeping, eating, cooking, or recreating, or a combination thereof. A floor area used only for storage purposes is not a habitable floor. Frontage, the linear edge of a property along the property line abutting a street or private access way. Garage, private, a detached accessory building or portion of a main building for the parking of automobiles of the occupants of the premises. Garage, public, a building other than a private garage used for the care, repair, parking, or storage of automobiles.
I have a question.
Yeah.
Why is garage a detached accessory building? Can't it be attached?
So it does say a detached accessory building or portion of a main building
Oh, got it. I see.
for the parking of automobiles.
Got it.
Okay. Grade, ground level. The average elevation of the finished ground level at the centers of all walls of a building, except that if a wall is parallel to and within 5 feet of a sidewalk, the sidewalk elevation nearest the center of the wall shall constitute the ground level.
So I'm assuming that this kind of definition comes from some engineering source or some commonly accepted source.
That's my understanding as well.
Okay, but there's no reference, so we just have to take it on Walt's.
Yeah, I mean, if it's something that we feel strongly about, we can look into other options. But it's basically intended to be this is the common ground that we're starting from. And if someone's reviewing our code to know what we're gonna base our rules on, they would be referring to these definitions.
I'm just curious about Walt's source, that we just have to,
I
we
can-
have to trust his sources.
I mean, at this point, if we have questions, we can dig into it further on.
So I don't have a question. It's just that this is a technical definition,
Mhm.
so it's got to come from somewhere. I
Yeah.
don't think Walt just made it up.
No,
So-
it's very similar to a lot of definitions that come straight out of the IBC or the International Building Code and the residential version as well.
Yeah.
But I don't know if we need to note that there.
I think you're right. I think to some degree, we are just trusting Walt to note that, hey, he got it from somewhere and it's some commonly accepted standard. And so it is, none of us are, I guess, technical enough to really know the difference. And we can certainly dig in when it seems to be a bit more important, or maybe this rises to that level. I don't know. That's for you guys to decide, I guess.
Well, I don't know this subject, so I'm
Yeah.
just speaking out of ignorance
Mhm.
and wanting it to be right.
Based on my reading, it seems plausible, or it seems reasonable, but I don't have experience in actually constructing houses, so
But we also paid Walt to give us the right language, right? So, okay,
that's why he gets the big bucks.
okay.
Yeah, it looks like it's from the IRC, which is the International Residential Code.
Hmm.
So.
Yeah.
Which would be a governing body put out by.
Mm-hmm. Okay. Hard surface. An area surface with asphalt, concrete, paving blocks, or an equivalent substance approved by the city engineer, but shall not include gravel. Hedge, a row of bushes or small trees planted close together, which may form a barrier, enclosure, or boundary in the front yard or sides or street side yard. High groundwater, the near surface groundwater which can present a problem to land development and engineering construction. Half story means that part of any building wholly or partly within the roof frame and not occupying more than 2/3 of the floor area immediately below it. Home occupation. A lawful occupation carried on by a resident of a dwelling where the occupation is secondary to the main use of the property as a residence. Hotel or motel, any building or portion thereof designed or used to offer guest rooms or suites for temporary lodging with or without meals, for compensation, but excluding any institution in which human beings are housed or detained under legal restraint. So I guess it doesn't count prisons, jails. House of worship, a permanently located building primarily used for religious worship. This definition shall also include accessory buildings for related religious activities and a residence. Impervious area, an area with minimal infiltration of surface water into the underlying soil, and shall include pavement such as concrete, asphalt, gravel, roadways, structures, and roofs or other similar surfaces that limit water penetration. Impervious surface, any material such as rooftops, asphalt, or concrete, which reduces or prevents absorption of water into soil. Improved street, a hard surface roadway with curb and gutter. Internal, let's see. I wonder if that
Yeah,
should
that
be
a
expanded to include sidewalks.
Oh, no, never mind.
Sidewalk.
Because our typical standard, our current standards of what we will accept as a street usually
Yeah.
include sidewalks.
Yeah,
Mhm. Is that something you'd be interested in expanding then?
absolutely.
If it's a
Okay.
city requirement, yeah.
Okay. Interested person, a person who has legal standing in a land use decision and may appeal a decision by virtue of their participation in the public hearing process for that decision. Intermittent runoff, the official designated natural or man-made open drainage channel or course necessary to convey stormwater runoff. Intersection, an at-grade connection of a public or private approach road to the highway. Junkyards. The use of property for the storage of salvage materials, including scrap metals or other scrap materials, or for the dismantling or wrecking of automobiles or other vehicles or machinery, whether or not such uses are conducted as a business for profit or otherwise. Yeah, you take over my now. That's right.
Kennel, any premises where 4 or more dogs, cats, or other small animals, or any combination thereof, are kept commercially or permitted to remain for compensation, propagation, training, or sale, except not including a clinic for small or large animals. Landscaping, the term includes trees, grass, shrubs, flowers, water features, garden areas, the arrangement of paths, walkways, fountains, patios, decks, fencing, street and yard furniture, ornamental concrete or stonework, decorative retaining walls, earth forms such as grading, mounding, contouring, and terracing, exterior use of artificial turf or carpeting, artificial plants, shrubs, or flowers, both native and non-native vegetation may constitute landscaping materials. This definition pertains to the complete site modifications other than buildings and parking areas and driveways. Land division, any partition or subdivision of a parcel or lot. Land use, the activity or activities that occur on a piece of land. Activities may be individually identified as primary or accessory uses. Land use decision, a final decision or determination made by the City of Sweet Home that concerns the adoption, amendment, or application of the statewide planning goals, the comprehensive plan, or any land use regulation, i.e. this development code, where the decision requires the interpretation or exercise of policy or legal judgment. Decisions requiring quasi-judicial review by the city are considered land use decisions. Decisions subject to administrative review are considered limited land use decisions pursuant to ORS 197.015. Lawn, any grass or similar materials usually maintained as a ground cover or of less than 6 inches in height. For purposes of this chapter, lawn is not considered native vegetation regardless of the species used. LCDC, Oregon Land Conservation and Development Commission. Legislative process, a process that leads to the adoption of the rules or policies that have broad implications for a large geographic area or for the community as a whole. Livestock, animals of the bovine species, horses, mules, asses, sheep, goats, and swine.
So I have a question about this, because if you look at page I or 1-28 under pets, they also talk about animals. And I guess chickens could be included as poultry under pets, but there's nothing about rabbits. Are rabbits rodents?
So it says it excludes poultry
Right,
out of pets.
out of pets.
Poultry don't count as pets.
Don't tell my wife.
So yeah, so where do chickens and rabbits fit in? Because they're not livestock.
According to some codes here in the state of Oregon, chickens are livestock. So I mean, not as far as like city code, but like state code enforcement.
Right. So for the purposes of the development code, I guess the question is, most, this has bearing when it comes to residential areas, what uses are, and commercial areas for that matter, what uses are permitted. And so if someone is raising chickens and is going to contest that that's allowed because chickens aren't included in the livestock definition, then we may have a problem. The same thing with rabbits, I suppose. So I guess what are your thoughts on the matter? Are you?
I mean, these are common animals, so.
Well, there's certain animals we're not allowed to have in city limits. Is that correct?
In the code enforcement section of our code, which is, I don't know the exact number, it does talk about chickens, ducks, pretty much everything. It talks about how many you can have, like you can't have roosters.
Right.
So not in the land use code, but in the code compliance
Okay.
code, it's all listed, all the different animals, bunnies, all of it's in there. So this for the code compliance.
Yeah, so for the purposes of this, the only thing you have to consider is what about an appropriate land use component, because these animals are going to be governed by other areas of the code. But when it comes to what parts of the community can have those kinds of animals, and so forth, I suppose this is probably something we can keep in mind as we move forward into the code and see how livestock is treated.
Well, I mean, I guess that's a question, is where does the one part of code match this? Do they need to match or not? Does it matter? I don't know.
When it comes to this code, the development code matching what we do code compliance with, it doesn't necessarily need to match, because that's more nuisance-based kind of things. Whereas this is more in line with what kind of building are you constructing, and what kind of business, what kind of use you're having for the land.
Somebody could have a whole half acre of rabbit hutches.
That's a concern,
Yeah,
certainly.
I
Yeah.
know that somewhere there are restrictions as far as numbers of animals per your lot size.
When it comes to the nuisance ordinance, that yes, there are rules on that.
Because I can have 31 chickens.
You've
I don't
invest-
want
you've
31
checked.
chickens.
Your wife has checked that.
My wife knew that.
So, but still, it's a valid point.
Just
Do
saying.
you want to consider chickens and rabbits as livestock for the purposes of the code, or is that something you want to kind of take a wait and see approach?
I think if we include chickens and ducks and things like that in livestock, it might actually cause more problems later on if there's opposition in the actual code enforcement to having livestock inside the city limits and what they're calling livestock.
How is pets used in our development code? Under what chapter section?
To be
Would we
honest,
be making a
I don't know.
review?
I don't think we've gone into pets before.
Yeah.
In our previous code, so I don't recall coming across it.
I don't know where that could be. Besides, like you said, under the new city.
Yeah, I mean,
ordinance.
I could do an electronic search of, and
Trying to do
see what I can find. I was gonna
You
do
got
it.
your laptop? Okay, that's probably easier than my phone. And that's one thing in the nuisance. It's not just for nuisances. It does just list like how many acres or square feet you have to have for
Yeah.
one horse or 4 goats or
Yeah.
chickens, depending on that. So it's just, and then it lists some of the things you can't have. So
Yeah.
it does cover the gamut in it. I can't tell you specifically exactly which ones, but I just know the code and compliance
Yeah.
officer sits behind me. And so we
Yeah.
talk about it all the time.
Yeah, I bet.
So I guess the question then is, nuisance codes are usually driven by complaints. So could somebody, whether they know about the nuisance code or not, go ahead and put in 30 rabbit hutches and hope that the neighbors won't complain because they have a rabbit business? I mean, I don't know. I'm just,
And that's one of the things, that people do, and that's when anything gets called out. And so,
right. I mean, 80% of the people this will not be a problem for, but there will be 20% that it will be a problem. So
Is there clarification at what point it becomes for personal consumption versus a business? And at that point,
Oh, yeah.
it's a business.
well, if it's a business,
conditional use
I was
permit.
gonna say they would have to do a conditional use, but despite
Mhm.
whether it's a business or personal, they're only allowed so many,
Per square feet.
yeah. So it doesn't matter what side of the coin they're on, and if they're gonna get into bulk chicken, then that's more of an industrial. So it's gotta be zoned for it. So if you're just doing 5 chickens in your backyard for your own eggs and fryers, then that's a totally different scenario. So it kind of depends on, it also depends on the zoning, depending on what you want to do with it, so.
Let me look
I'm
into
just
that
saying.
let me look into that while we continue, and
We'll try. I'm not getting anywhere on my phone.
why don't you go ahead? And
Go.
I'll
Okay.
I'll take a look at what I can find on pets and livestock.
Okay. Loading space, an off-street space or berth on the same lot with the building or contiguous. sneeze. Yeah. Excuse me. Bless you. Thank you. Or contiguous to a group of buildings used for the temporary parking of a commercial vehicle while loading or unloading merchandise or materials, and which abuts upon a street, alley, or other appropriate means of access. Pardon me. I think I am. I don't know where that came from. Lot, a unit of land created by a subdivision as defined in ORS 92.010 in compliance with all applicable zoning and subdivision codes, or created by deed or land sales contract. If there were no applicable zoning, subdivision, or partitioning codes exclusive of units of land created solely to establish a separate tax account. Such lots may consist of a single lot of record, a portion of a lot of record, or a combination thereof. Lots created judicially, I can't say that, may be considered legal lots only if established as part of a formal judicial decree or settlement. Lot area, the total horizontal area contained within the lot lines of a lot, excluding street or alley rights of way, and the portion of the flag lot within the pole or driveway area. Lot corner, a lot abutting upon two or more streets at their intersection, or upon two parts of the same street. Such streets or parts of the same street forming an interior angle of less than 135 degrees within the lot lines. Lot coverage, the portion of the total lot area covered by structure and paving expressed as percentage of the total lot area. Lot depth, the horizontal mean average distance between the front and rear lot lines. Lot flag, a lot created which is behind a lot of fronting on a street, and which is connected to that street by a driveway located on the narrow strip of land. The strip of land may be a portion of the lot behind the street fronting lot, or an access easement over the street fronting lot.
So I have a question about this one, because in the land use application that we had 2 weeks ago, we did not call the access to the back lot a flagpole, and we didn't call that lot a flag lot.
So we have a couple different definitions. So we have the flag lot, we have the joint use driveway, and then we have the access easement.
Yeah,
And so there's three different ways they can do it. An access easement is just an easement over the line, over the front property. So you have the back property and the front property. It's just an easement to go through their property. The front still owns all
it
that.
still owns it, but they're giving an easement to go to the back.
So, and then the flag lot is that strip is owned by the person in the back. And that's the piece that is owned there. And then the shared driveway is the driveway that goes through, and they both have their driveways coming off the shared driveway.
Okay, thanks.
Can I interrupt? So going back to the pets and livestock question, looking through the rest of the code draft, Article 3 is the only place where this comes up, and it's mostly in this section on fencing to describe what the purpose of the fencing is. But then it also talks about the use of property for the care of livestock. One thing that's interesting is that the section that goes over farm uses and livestock, it actually says livestock, comma, chickens, comma, rabbits, comma, and similar. So it calls out chickens and rabbits directly, whereas livestock is treated as a separate category. So we don't really necessarily need to include chickens or rabbits because it's already called out specifically later. That's in 17.82.050. That goes over, see, that is the general standards in Article 3. And the only time pets is called out at all is when it comes to the fencing.
Ready? Okay, lot interior, a lot or parcel of land other than a corner lot. Lot line, a line that defines a boundary of a lot. Lot line front, the boundary line of a lot that abuts a street other than a side or rear yard line. For a corner lot, the shortest property line along a street other than an alley. If two or more street lot lines are of equal length, the location of the architectural front of the home, either existing or proposed by the owner, shall be considered the front lot line. If the lot does not abut a street, the longest boundary line closest to the street, other than the pole portion of the flag lot, shall be the front lot line. Lot line rear, a lot line not abutting a street, which is opposite and most distant from the front lot line and not intersecting a front lot line, except on a corner lot. In the case of irregular, triangular, or other shaped lots, the line 10 feet in length within the within the lot parallel and at a maximum distance from the front lot line. Lot line side, any lot line not front or rear line. Lot through, any lot except a corner lot that abuts two or more streets and or highways. Lot of record, a legally created lot held in separate ownership as shown on the record of the county prior to the time of the passage of an ordinance or regulation establishing a new zoning district or new standard within an existing district, within which it is located regardless of the lots compliant with standards of the new regulation. Lot width, the average horizontal distance between the side lot lines ordinarily measured parallel to the front lot line. Maintain, to cause or allow to continue in existence. When the context indicates the word shall mean to preserve and care for a structure, improvement, condition, or area to such an extent that it remains attractive, safe, and presentable and carries out the purpose for which it was installed, constructed, or required. Manufactured dwellings. 1. Manufactured home. A structure constructed for movement on the public highway that has sleeping, cooking, and plumbing facilities that is intended for human occupancy, that is being used for residential purposes, and that was constructed in accordance with the federal manufactured housing, construction, and safety standards and regulations in effect at the time of the construction. 2. Mobile home. A structure constructed for movement on a public highways that has sleeping, cooking, and private facilities that is intended for human occupancy, that is being used for residential purchases, and that was constructed between January 1st, 1962 and June 15, 1976, and met the construction requirements of Oregon mobile home law in the effect at the time of construction. Number 3, residential travel trailer, a structure constructed for movement on the public highways that has sleeping, cooking, and plumbing facilities that is intended for human occupancy, that has been being used for residential purposes, and that was constructed before January 1st, 1962.
So on that really quick, so we're just clarifying that manufactured home is the current. Anything built after June 15th, 1976 is considered a manufactured home and not a mobile home or a residential trailer.
And I think this is mainly due to federal law and what's allowed to be
Code.
transported over the highways.
So do we need to add that date into number 1, stating that this is anything built after June 15th, 1976?
I'm
Or
not,
is it just implied based on its clarification in the other two?
I think it's that the other two are kind of a sub definition in that they're specifically based on those time frames,
Okay.
and things that are outside that would be considered a manufactured home.
All right. Thank you.
Manufactured home park. Any place where 4 or more manufactured dwellings are located within 500 feet of one another on a lot under the same ownership, the primary purpose of which is to rent or lease space or keep space for rent or lease to any person.
I have a question. What's significant about the 500 feet? Can they be more than 500 feet? And if,
I don't know the manufacturer. Can look that up.
and if they,
That's a good question. I think if somebody had so manufactured homes parks have to be specifically allowed in the zone that they're where they reside. So
and would that mean that it's under single ownership, or do we include parks with individual lot ownership?
well, typically it's got a manufactured home park has to be on the same lot, all on the same. So I guess this would exclude if say somebody had just a really large piece of land and they had an accessory structure that happened to be a manufactured dwelling, then it would kind of exclude it if it was a large enough property. 500 feet there's no way anybody's going to build a manufactured home park and have things more than 500 feet away from each other, because it's just no way to make money with that. I'm not sure really why the distinction is made there.
Just wondering if it was some type of code or review code, or
We can
if
certainly
someone came to us with
yeah.
an application for a manufactured home park.
Yeah, I know
We'd
the
have to
density
say-
is much, much tighter because the original development for Duck Hollow was supposed to be that. And then that slid out and became some stick builts being allowed to be
Okay.
built
Yeah.
very, very close to each other.
Mm.
So I know that in a mobile home park, you can fit a lot more residents per acre.
Typically, yeah, and they're typically they're all on the same lot.
Right.
Whereas in a neighborhood, there are some neighborhoods where they're manufactured housing neighborhoods where each is an individual lot and they
Mhm.
each have a manufactured home on them, but they're not a mobile home park because they're all separately owned parcels.
Okay.
I'm not sure the distinction of the 500 feet is one that kind of confused me. I'm not sure why. I think that's probably an effort to make sure that people don't accidentally get qualified as a mobile home park when that
Okay.
wasn't really their intention.
Okay.
And now that mass movement. Mass movement, the slow or rapid natural or artificially induced movement of a rock, soil, or fill downslope in response to gravity. The major geologic types of mass movement include earth flow, slump, rock slide, rockfall, and mud flow. Mini storage warehouse, an area or areas located within an enclosed building or structure used only in connection with the residential land use for the storage of non-flammable or non-explosive materials. Mitigation, compensating for impacts to a significant natural resource or its buffer, including restoration, creation, or enhancement. Some examples of mitigation actions are construction of a new wetlands to replace an existing wetland that has been filled, replanting trees, removal of nuisance plants, and restoring streamside vegetation where it is disturbed. Mobile home space, a plot of land within a manufactured or mobile home park designed for the placement of one mobile home. Modular home, a structure for residential use that has a sleeping, cooking, and public facilities, plumbing facilities, and is constructed offsite in compliance with the Uniform Building Code, Oregon State Structural Code, and designed to be transported to a site for installation and or assembly of modular components to form a permanent structure. Native vegetation, plants identified as naturally occurring and historically found within the city of Sweet Home. Natural resources, an area of any locally inventoried wetland, pond, stream, channel, river, lake, or habitat area. Natural resource enhancement, a modification of a natural resource to improve its quality. Natural resource overlay, a designation given to all significant wetlands and riparian corridors delineated on the significant natural resource map. Nearby uses, activities or uses within 1/4 mile of a development which can be reasonably expected to be used by pedestrians and within 1 mile of development which can reasonably expected to be used by bicyclists. Neighborhood activity centers, schools, parks, and other similar sites. New construction, structures for which construction was initiated on or after the effective date of this development code. Non-conforming site conditions, a legally established site that does not conform to the landscaping, parking, or other site development standards as of the zone in which it was located. Non-conforming structure or lot, a lawful existing structure or lot at the time of this chapter or any amendment thereto becomes effective which does not conform to the dimensional or similar standards of the zone in which it is located. Non-conforming use, a lawful existing use at the time of this chapter or any amendment thereto become effective which does not conform to the use requirements of the zone in which it is located. Nursing home, any home, place, or institution which operates and maintains facilities provided convalescent or chronic care or both for a period exceeding 24 hours or for 2 or more ill or infirm patients not related to the nursing home administrator or owner by blood or marriage.
So this is a really bizarre definition. I tried to just bring it to a little bit more modern 21st century language. So I have a facility that provides a wide range of health and personal care services. You could add mostly focused on medical care if you wanted to. I went to the Center for Aging, part of the NIH, for that kind of definition, but this administrator, owner by blood or marriage thing is just really bizarre. And anyway, so that needs to be redone. Want me to say it again?
Sure.
So nursing home, a facility that provides a wide range of health and personal care services. And then if you want to add mostly focused on medical care. It's pretty generic, but I made a point of keeping it pretty generic.
Facility that provides a wide range of health or personal care services.
And personal care
Health
services
and mostly focused.
on medical care.
We might look too and see if there's any kind of nursing home definition in state code already and see what we can combine between the two.
So I think the period exceeding 24 hours is probably important because we want to make sure we capture.
Right.
We're not going to accidentally capture some place where people just happen to be for a temporary period.
Like a miniature rehab
Well,
facility.
I guess the concern is you want to be careful that you're not going to accidentally capture people you don't want to capture in the definition.
Yeah.
So
in looking at definitions, I didn't see a 24-hour thing.
It's
Okay.
probably going to need to be what the state defines, because they're the ones that are going to have to give the licensing to these facilities or care homes.
And there are also definitions for long-term care versus assisted living versus residential facilities. There are all definitions for those. But this is kind of so in that regard, this is kind of old language, nursing home, because we've got more specific language for assisted living, da-da-da.
So would you like us to research this?
Yes.
And find a more modern
Yes,
definition?
yes,
Okay.
leave the blood out of
I
it.
think in
So,
particular, we want to
okay.
make sure it fits with state code.
Yeah,
or
with the state
statute.
license
Okay,
for it.
we'll take a look at that.
Okay, thank you.
Do you want me to take over?
Sure.
Occupancy, the purpose for which a building or part of a building is used or intended to be used. Official zoning map, the map established by adoption by the city council on which plan locations, particularly of streets, are indicated with detail and exactness so as to furnish the basis for property acquisition, building restrictions, building permits, zoning, or other uses or activities, the original of which shall be kept on file in the office of the city manager. Oh.
You're right, and to be in the office of the city manager,
Okay. I mean,
office used in the most broadest sense, like in the building.
I suppose, yeah. I mean, we could have it just say kept on file at City Hall. I mean, that covers any future reorganization of departments and
Well,
such.
that way somebody doesn't freak out if the filing cabinet is not in the office of the city manager. That'd be a big filing cabinet.
Okay. Open space, land that is not covered by buildings, paving, or other hard surfaces unless such hard surfaces are part of an approved landscape plan, and such land is intended to remain open for visual and/or active or passive recreational use. Open storage, to put aside or accumulate property for use when needed at a later date or for disposal in an area that is exposed to the public view from a public street. Owner, the owner of record of real property as shown on the latest tax rolls or deed records of the county, or a person who is purchasing a parcel or property under written contract. Parcel, a single unit of land that is created by partitioning by a partitioning of land, or a unit of land created by deed or land sale contract prior to adoption of local planning, zoning, or partitioning regulations. Parcel does not include a unit of land created solely to establish a separate tax account. Parking
Question.
area, yes.
What if you create something for specifically a separate tax account? What do you call it then?
Well, the problem is that sometimes a person will own two separate parcels that are next to each other. and they will bring it under the same tax account for paying, to simplify their paying of their property taxes. The problem is that if you use that as a basis for any development, then theoretically they could sell the other parcel at a later time, just have the tax office at the county, separate those accounts again. But if you've based your development on that, then your setbacks are off. You possibly could have a property line going through the middle of a building, and so forth, and it just makes it a mess for that property. So you do need to specify, because some people think that just because they have them together on the tax rolls, that means that those properties are combined, and they really aren't. That's just for the ease of paying the account.
Okay, thanks.
Parking area, private. An open area, building, or structure other than a street or alley used for the parking of the automobiles of residents and guests of a building. Parking area, public. An open area, building, or structure other than a private parking area, street or alley. Other than a private parking area, street or alley used for the parking of automobiles and other motor vehicles and available for use by persons patronizing a particular building, establishment, or area. Parking space. A durable, dustless, concrete or asphalt paved and marked surface area, but excluding paved area necessary for access and maneuvering into and out of the space. The following are not considered parking spaces for the purposes of OAR 660-12-045 5C. Park and ride lots, handicapped parking, and parking for carpools and van pools.
So I have a question about the handicap parking language. That's old language as well. I guess I didn't look at OR 6.
OAR.
OAR da. So I was just going to propose ADA accessible. That's a little bit more 21st century.
Yeah.
I mean, a lot of the disability community are very offended with the use of the word handicapped. So.
Okay. I think that's reasonable to change. Partition. To divide an area or tract of land into 2 or 3 parcels within a calendar year, when such area or tract of land exists as a unit or contiguous units of land under single ownership at the beginning of such year. Partition does not include divisions of land resulting from lien foreclosures, divisions of land resulting from contracts for the sale of real property, and divisions of land resulting from the creation of cemetery lots, or 2, any adjustment of a lot line by the relocation of a common boundary where an additional parcel is not created and where the existing parcel reduced in size by the adjustment is not reduced below the minimum lot size established by any applicable zoning regulation. Or 3, a sale or grant by a person to a public agency or public body for state highway, county road, or other right-of-way purposes, provided that such road or right-of-way complies with the applicable comprehensive plan and ORS 215.213, paragraph 2Q, to paragraph S, and 215.283, paragraph 2P to paragraph R. Pathway. A pedestrian facility that is entirely separate from the roadway and generally serves as an on-site pedestrian system within a development or park. Pedestrian connection. A continuous, unobstructed, reasonably direct route intended and suitable for pedestrian use between 2 points. Pedestrian connections include, but are not limited to, sidewalks, walkways, accessways, stairways, and pedestrian bridges. Pedestrian way, a right-of-way for pedestrian traffic. Permit, noun, any action granting permission to do an act or to engage in activity where such permission is required by this code. Permitted use, those uses permitted in a zone that are allowed without obtaining a conditional use permit. Permittee, the person who is proposing to use or develop property for which use or development requires a permit, or the person who is using the property or development subject to a permit issued for the property. Person, every natural person, firm, partnership, association, social or fraternal organization, corporation, trust, estate, receiver, syndicate, branch of government, or any group of combination acting as a unit.
So I have a comment about this one. So using a word to define itself, like a person is a natural person, doesn't really work. So I went to ORS 197.015, which is the definitions for the state.
Mhm.
And their definition is any individual, partnership, association, corporation, branch of government, or public or private organization of any kind.
Hmm.
So if you want to check that out,
What was that from?
ORS 197.015.
So look at substituting in the word individual for person.
Yeah,
Instead of natural person, it would be individual.
yes, any individual, and then it goes on.
Okay. Would the rest of the commission like us to make that change?
I agree with that.
Okay. Okay. Pets. Dogs or cats, excluding large or exotic varieties normally located in the wild or displayed by zoological societies. Birds, excluding poultry. Turtles, fish, lizards, non-poisonous reptiles, and snakes and rodents when contained and housed within a residence and not present in sufficient numbers as to constitute a nuisance to neighbors or to constitute a business. Plan map. The official adopted map of the city, including urban growth boundaries showing land use designations and other graphic information, which is part of the city's comprehensive plan. Planned road or street, a highway, road, street, or alley identified in an adopted corridor plan, comprehensive plan, or transportation system plan in accordance with administrative procedures of OAR 660-012 and ORS Chapter 197, but that has not been constructed. Planned development, a type of development of a site which, as a single project, is based on a design which incorporates all elements of land, structures, and uses in conformance with the applicable standards of this code. Planning Commission or Commission, the Planning Commission of the City of Sweet Home, Oregon.
So again, I don't think you can use the title as a definition of what it is.
So I agree with you, but in this case, it's basically taking the full, this is more an abbreviation than a definition. So the Planning Commission of the City of Sweet Home, Oregon is the body, it's this body, but you don't want to repeat that the entire time throughout the entire code. And so that's why the definition is, you can, that's the definition. And then the term is Planning Commission or just Commission.
Okay, because I had proposed something else just because. So the Planning Commission is the people appointed by the City Council to adjudicate the Sweet Home Development Code or adjudicate issues related to the development code. I don't know if that, I mean, I understand what you're saying, but I wrote something else. So,
Okay. Is that something we'd like to discuss or adjust?
There's definitely validity to both statements. I understand what Blair's saying, just as, we're simplifying what it truly means by just using planning commission or commission. But maybe throwing in additional verbiage about people that are appointed by the city.
Yeah. I guess my only reason for not just jumping at the change is that that's defined elsewhere in our city code.
okay.
There's rules on what makes up the planning commission and what they have the power to do.
Okay.
Okay, so that would be fine then. Okay.
Planter strip, a landscape area for street trees and other plantings within the public right of way, usually a continuous planter area between the street and a sidewalk. Plat, a map, diagram, drawing, replat, or other writing containing all of the descriptions, locations, specifications, dedications, provisions, and information concerning a subdivision, condominium division, or land partition. 1. A tentative plat is one that is prepared for review and considered by the city for compliance with development regulation standards. 2. A final plat is one that is prepared for recordation with the county after the city has approved the tentative plat. The final plat must substantially conform to the specifications as approved. That's a typo, as approved for the tentative plat. Ponding, the local accumulation of rainwater on the surface of the ground or to rising groundwater which actually has surfaced. Professional office, an office occupied by medical professionals, accountants, attorneys, architects, professional engineers, or surveyors, or persons engaged in similar occupations. Property or lot boundary, the division line between two units of land. Property or lot line adjustment, the relocation of a common property line between two abutting properties. Public facilities and services, projects, activities, and facilities which are necessary for the public health, safety, and welfare. Qualified natural resource professional, an individual who has proven expertise and vocational experience in a given natural resource field. A qualified professional conducting a wetland delineation must have the delineation approved by the Oregon Division of State Lands. Quasi-judicial review, a decision affecting land use within the city, which requires the interpretation and/or amendment of existing standards or maps contained in this code. Reasonably direct, a route that does not deviate unnecessarily from a straight line or a route that does not involve a significant amount of out-of-direction travel for likely users. Recreational vehicle, a vacation trailer, vehicle, or portable unit which is either self-propelled, towed, or carried by a motor vehicle, which is 1. Built on a single chassis, 2. Less than 400 square feet, 3. Designed primarily as a temporary living quarters for recreational camping, travel, or seasonal use, and 4. Not designed or intended as a permanent dwelling. A recreational vehicle does not meet the definition for a manufactured home or a mobile home. Recreation park, any area for picnicking or overnight camping by the general public or any segment of the public. Recreational facility, a recreation facility under private ownership and operated by a profit or nonprofit organization open to bona fide members and providing one or more type of recreation activity. Recreational retail, an establishment engaged in selling goods or merchandise when associated with a recreational development, marina, and docks and other similar uses. Recreational vehicle park, a lot which is designed and operated for compensation as a place for temporary or short-term parking of occupied recreational vehicles. Recreational vehicle storage, a lot which is designed and operated for compensation as a place for temporary or long-term storage of unoccupied recreational vehicles. Next is residential accessory dwelling, which we actually changed to just accessory dwelling, and I believe we moved that. So we talked about that one last time. Residential care facility. As used in ORS 197, a residential facility is a residential treatment or training home or adult foster home licensed by the state of Oregon, which provides care, treatment, or training for 6 to 15 individuals, and which may also provide housing for staff persons who provide services to those individuals. For the purposes, there's another typo, of this development code, a residential facility is considered to be a form of multifamily residential development. Residential care home. As used in ORS 197, a residential facility is a residential treatment or training home or adult foster home licensed by the state of Oregon, which provides care, treatment, or training for 5 or fewer individuals, and which may also provide housing for staff persons who provide services to those individuals. For the purposes, another typo, of this development code, a residential care home is considered to be a form of single-family dwelling unit.
So, and just to note, that's where I got the ORS 197 for the definition for nursing home.
I see. Resort, a facility for transient guests where the primary attraction is generally recreational features or activities. Retaining wall, a structure that holds back any material, usually earth, and prevents it from sliding or eroding away. Review authority, the individual board, commission, or city council who has authority to decide on a land use application as defined by this development code. Right of way, real property or an interest in real property owned by a roadway authority for the purpose of constructing, operating, and maintaining public facilities. Riparian boundary, an imaginary line that is a certain distance upland from the top of the bank and encompasses everything within the area between the wetland and the upper edge of the riparian area. The City of Sweet Home has adopted the safe harbor setback methodology for this identification. Riparian corridor, a Goal 5 resource that includes the water areas, fish habitat, riparian areas, and wetlands within the riparian corridor boundary. For purposes of this chapter, riparian areas are identified on the significant natural resource overlay zone maps as adopted in the comprehensive plan. Roadway, the portion of a right-of-way that is improved for motor vehicle and bicycle travel, subject to applicable state motor vehicle licensing requirements. Roadway includes vehicle travel lanes and on-street parking areas. Roadway does not include area devoted to curbs, parking strips, or sidewalks. Go for it. Yeah.
Roadway authority, the city or other agency with jurisdiction over a road or street. School, elementary, junior high, or high school, a public, private, or parochial institution offering instruction in the several branches of learning and study in accordance with the rules and regulations of the State Department of Education. School, trade, or commercial, a building where the instruction is given to pupils for a fee in money or otherwise, which fee is the principal reason for the existence of the school. Semi-public use, a structure or use intended or used for a semi-public purpose by a church, lodge, club, or any other nonprofit organization.
So I just have a question about this. It just seems kind of semi-public. Like, I don't quite get how a church, lodge, club, or any other nonprofit is semi-public. I mean, maybe that's, I just don't get the language, but
Essentially, some organizations try to get out of following commercial regulations for commercial safety and such by claiming to be, oh, we're not actually open to the public. We're only open to our members or something like that. And so it's semi-public in that you have to be a member of that organization to go there. But it's public in that the barriers to membership are not very high, and they really are operating like a public space.
right.
You know, like a church.
Does it really, you don't have to be a member to go to a church.
Well, most churches, you might, I mean, maybe technically, I suppose, but.
They're probably open during certain hours, like.
Right.
The public can't just go to any church here any time of day like they could at City Park.
Sure.
Mm,
Only go to
Yeah.
mm,
But,
It's the church.
right, but all the various rules that we have for public places and for, commercial buildings and such would still apply
So-
because of that.
So does Bi-Mart fit in that? Because it's really easy to get a membership.
In fact, I have shopped there several times and I'm not a member.
Yeah.
They let me shop there anyway.
They don't
Okay.
like-
They're still a public place.
right. But anyway,
Oh, well, right. They told me that I don't get any lucky numbers. Okay.
Is Jamie's
I can't pay
mic?
my check.
Your mic on? Sorry.
Oh, she's just being a goof. Sorry, I got us off on a rabbit trail.
I don't think he can hear you. He was just checking to see if the mic's on.
Oh,
Jamie, you might have the one that's weird that.
I think it's on.
Can you hear me now, Commissioner
Yes.
Stevens?
Yes.
Yeah. Sorry, I was just kind of poking fun at our
Well, I like to hear
Community
them
development
too.
director.
We were just trying to decide whether Bi-Mart would be you know, an organization that was a semi-public use.
But for instance, the Elks Lodge, right? They're semi-public,
Yeah.
but they still have to follow a lot of the rules that we have in place for public places.
Sorry, back on task.
Mhm.
But that was fun.
You gotta throw some humor and read
Yeah.
it.
Hey.
Excellent.
Going to almost say.
Yeah, we lost our one attendee.
Do we
so-
know why she was here?
I think she was at the last meeting, wasn't she?
Thinking that we were continuing on with the development of Foothills.
No, I don't think so. She, if I remember correctly, she talked to me about just coming and observing,
Oh,
just because she's got some property that eventually she's thinking of developing, and she's just interested in how the community works.
there may be an open chair. I don't know.
Well, yeah, could be.
Ready? All right, senior housing. Housing specifically designed for and occupied by individuals 55 years of age or older. Housing arrangements may include independent living, apartments, nursing, and rehabilitation care and continuing care communities.
So I have a little comment for that. There are definitions that still include the 55 years of age and older as part of it. But you could also, some alternative language would be designed for and occupied by an aging population, a little bit less specific. And then I don't think the second sentence is necessary.
I think the aging population bit is certainly fine. I would caution about removing the second sentence simply because there are, when we get into where senior housing is permitted, the types of facilities that some of them are more of a communal living situation, some of them are separate units. That makes it tricky to approve when we don't have that specificity. For example, over at Wiley Creek, they have the main building that provides assisted living,
Right.
and then they have separate buildings that
Right.
are independent living.
Cottages, right.
If we don't have the specificity in the definition, it makes it harder to have such developments like that approved.
Yeah, and I would say based on, I work at the Mennonite home in Albany, and there's seven different levels of care.
Right.
So they can get quite specific.
But the language again says housing arrangements may include.
Mhm. Well, and what
That means it may include other arrangements.
well, I guess the importance is that we're looking at it from a developer standpoint. Say
Yeah.
somebody wants to put in, because the way a lot of these can work financially is by having multiple different types of care in one,
Right.
have one staff and one organization doing all of it.
Yeah, because they charge different amounts of money for the levels of
Sure,
care.
and they have and there's different levels of need and so forth.
Right.
But being able to have all of those different types on the same site with, when it comes to the size of the buildings,
Right.
the way they're designed, and then having the independent stuff on the same site as well. If we didn't have this saying that those can all be included, well, then you have staff interpreting it later saying, well, you got to have a bunch of property lines drawn here and have it more like a subdivision that you own these separately. And
Okay.
so
Okay.
it makes it more difficult, and
Okay.
having that language is helpful.
Okay.
Service station, automobile, a place or station designed and used primarily for the supplying of motor fuel, oil, lubrication, and accessories to motor vehicles, but excluding major repair and overhauling. Setback, the minimum allowable
Question.
for, yep,
Why does it exclude major repair or overhauling?
because that's more like I'm a shop, I'm
Yeah.
a mechanical shop,
Mechanic
not
shop.
just a service station.
I think the idea of the whole service station is probably dying out as far as a well-rounded gas station that has a place where you can also get a quick oil change.
And
mean,
in
it's
and
not-
out,
they're
instead
not-
of
yeah.
it leave your car and come back later.
They're not doing full tune-ups and things like that.
Right.
It's a more, I don't know, it's a short menu.
Right. Well, the effects on the neighboring properties when you have a mechanic shop, typically there's more outdoor storage of vehicles.
Yeah.
They're maybe there's more activity when it comes to tow trucks and all things of that kind, whereas a service station is more, the reason why these get important is because sometimes in a neighborhood commercial zone, for example, you have service stations often that are not very far from residential properties. But because they are a relatively low impact when it's just people fueling up and going, it's not as much of an impact on the neighboring area. But if you have a mechanic shop, those can get bigger and involve more uses that people aren't really wanting
And
to
you
have
tend to
around there.
leave your vehicle.
True, that
At a
too.
service station, you don't really, you pull in, you might sit in a waiting room while your oil's being changed, but you don't
Mhm.
go away and leave your vehicle.
Okay, thank you.
Oh,
Okay, so just tell me when to stop.
sure.
Where was I at? Setback. The minimum allowable horizontal distance from the point or line of reference, such as a property line to the nearest vertical wall or other element of a building or structure. Shared driveway, a driveway used to access two or more parcels. Shared parking, required parking facilities for two or more uses, structures, or lots or parcels which are satisfied jointly with the same facilities. Shopping center, a retail store or combination of stores, usually including a grocery store, which provide goods for sale to the general public. Shrubs, for the purpose of the natural resource zone, a woody vegetation usually greater than 3 feet but less than 20 feet tall, including a multi-stem shrub and small trees and saplings. Sidewalk, a publicly or privately owned, privately paved pedestrian walkway within or adjacent to a street right-of-way or private street. Significant natural resource, significant wetland and riparian corridors within the city of Sweet Home's urban growth boundary and designated on a significant natural resource map. Significant wetlands, a wetland mapped on the city of Sweet Home local wetlands inventories, which meets the primary criteria of the Oregon Division of State Lands Administrative Rules for identifying significant wetlands. Site development, any human-caused change to improve or unimproved property, including but not limited to land surface mining, grading, filling, excavating, tree cutting, clearing, construction, installation or alteration of a building or other structure, paving, landscaping, establishment, or termination of an access or outdoor storage on the land. Site plan or development plan, a drawing or graphic depiction or plan prepared to scale, showing accurately and with complete scale dimensioning all existing and proposed uses, buildings, paving, and landscaping proposed for a specific parcel of land. Space, manufactured home, an area or lot reserved exclusively for the use of the manufactured home occupant. Start of construction. The date of a building permit is issued provided that the actual start of construction, repair, reconstruction, placement, or other improvements occur within 180 days of that permit, of the permit date. State and federal natural resource agencies, the Oregon Division of State Land, Oregon Department of Fish and Wildlife, U.S. Army Corps of Engineers, U.S. Department of Agriculture, Natural Resource Conservation Service, U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service, U.S. Environmental Protection Agency. Story, that portion of a building included between the upper surface of a floor and the upper surface of the floor next above, except that the topmost story shall be the portion of the building included between the upper surface of the top floor and the ceiling of a roof or roof above. If the finished floor level directly above the basement or cellar is more than 6 feet above grade as defined herein, such basement or cellar shall constitute a story. Stream, a channel such as a river or creek that carries flowing water, surface water, including perennial streams and intermittent streams with defined channels and excluding human-made irrigation and drainage channels. Stream bank erosion, the loss of land by stream action. Street or road, a public thoroughfare of right-of-way dedicated, deeded, or condemned for use as such, which affords the principal means of access to abutting properties, including avenue, space, way, drive, lane, boulevard, highway, or road. Alley, a narrow street through a block used primarily for access by service vehicles to the back or side of the properties fronting on another street. 2, arterial, a street used primarily for through traffic external to the city. Arterials are interested by collector streets and typically have limited direct access to abutting properties.
That should be,
That should be
intersected.
Interested in. Number 3, collector, a street used to some extent for through traffic and also for local circulation and access to abutting properties. Cul-de-sac or dead end, a short street with one end open to traffic and the other terminated by a vehicle turnaround. Frontage, a minor street parallel to and adjacent to an arterial or major collector street intended to provide access to abutting properties and providing protection from through traffic. Half street, a portion of the standard full width of a street, usually along the edge of a development where the remaining portion of the street could be provided in another development. Half street improvement could include up to 1/2 the total design width plus sufficient additional width past the center line to ensure the proper design and construction of center line crown as defined by the city engineer. Number 7, limited access street, a means of access to property that is limited by law or for public roads or by posting by an owner or private roads. 8, local, a street used exclusively for access to abutting properties. 9, private, a street which is privately owned and maintained. 10, a stub street, a temporary street ending where the street will be extended through an adjacent property in the future, as those properties develop, not a permanent street end or dead end street. Number 11, through street, a street that connects to other streets at both ends or is planned to do so in the future pursuant to a comprehensive plan, transportation system plan, access management plan, or land use approval.
Want me to take over?
Sure.
Structural alteration. Any change to the supporting members of a structure, including foundations, bearing walls, or partitions, columns, beams, girders, or structural change in the roof or in the exterior walls. Structure. Anything that is built or constructed, an edifice or building of any kind, or any piece of work artificially built up or composed of parts joined together in some definite manner. Structure does not include at-grade paved areas or vegetative landscaping materials. Subdivide land. To divide land into 4 or more lots within a calendar year, or to effect a subdivision of land as defined below. Subdivision. Either an act of subdividing land or an area or tract subdivided as defined in this development code. A subdivision means the division of land into more than 3 lots within a calendar year. Substantial development. Receipt of a valid public works permit or building permit for construction activities other than a grading permit is deemed to constitute substantial development. Substantial improvements. Any repair, reconstruction, or improvement of a structure, the cost of which equals or exceeds 50% of the market value of the structure, either A, before the improvement or repair is started, or B, if the structure has been damaged and is being restored before the damage occurred. For the purposes of this definition, substantial improvement is considered to occur when the first alteration of any wall, ceiling, floor, or other structural part of the building commences, whether or not that alteration affects the external dimensions of the structure. 2. The term does not, however, include either A, any project for improvement of a structure to comply with existing state or local health, sanitary, or safety code specifications, which are solely necessary to assure safe living conditions, or B, any alteration of a structure listed on the National Register of Historic Places or a state inventory of historic places. Tentative plan. A tentative plan is the application, supplemental data, and map showing the general design of a proposed subdivision or partition submitted to the city for approval under the provisions of ORS 9092 and the Sweet Home Development Code. I wonder if that's just 92. We better check on that because it sounds suspiciously short. Tiny home. A permanent one-family dwelling of 400 square feet or less that will be permanently anchored to the ground and able to follow the 2018 International Residential Code with Appendix Q, allowing for ladder access to sleeping lofts and reduced ceiling height limits. It requires permanent utility connections and fixtures as defined by standard plumbing and electrical code. Top of bank. A distinct break in slope between the stream bottom and the surrounding terrain, which corresponds with the bank full stage, which is the two-year high water mark of the stream. Transportation facilities. A physical facility used to move people and goods from one place to another, such as streets, sidewalks, pathways, bike lanes, transit stations, bus stops, etc. Transportation improvements. Facility improvements include but are not limited to 1. Normal operation, maintenance, repair, and preservation activities associated with existing transportation facilities. 2. Installation of culverts, pathways, medians, fencing, guardrail, lighting, and similar types of improvements within the existing right-of-way. 3. Projects specifically identified in the city's adopted transportation system plan. 4. Landscaping as part of a transportation facility. 5. Measures necessary for the safety and protection of property or the public. 6. Construction of a street or road as part of an approved subdivision or partition consistent with the city's adopted transportation system plan. 7. Construction of a street or road as part of an approved subdivision or land partition approved in accordance with the applicable land division code. Trees. For the purpose of the natural resource zone, a woody plant 5 inches or greater in diameter at breast height and 20 feet or taller. Use. The purpose for which land or a building is arranged, designed, or intended for which either land or a building is or may be occupied. Utilities. Any water, gas, sewer, storm drainage, electrical, telephone, or communication service, and all persons, companies, and agencies supplying the same. Urban growth boundary, an adopted boundary around the city which defines the area in which the city expects to grow, where public facilities will be extended, and where joint planning responsibilities are exercised with Lynn County. Vacations, a procedure to revert. Actually, that should be singular then if it's a procedure. A procedure to revert public lands, including a right-of-way, easements, and other public places to adjoining private property ownerships. Variance, a grant of relief from the requirements of this development code which permits development in a manner that would otherwise be prohibited by this development code. Violation, the division or use of land or structures or the construction of, addition to, or alteration of structures in a manner that does not fully comply with the provisions of this development code. Wall, a structure of brick, stone, etc. that surrounds an area or separates one area from another. Warehouse, a place for the safekeeping of goods and materials necessary for the proper functioning of an industrial or commercial enterprise. Also, a facility designed and intended to be used for the rental of storage units to individuals for the safekeeping of personal items. Wetland boundary, the edges of a wetland as delineated by a qualified professional. Wetlands, those areas that are inundated or saturated by surface or groundwater at a frequency and duration sufficient to support, and that under normal circumstances do support, a prevalence of vegetation typically adapted for life in saturated soil conditions. For purposes of this title, riparian areas are identified on the significant natural resource overlay zone maps as adopted in the comprehensive plan. Wetlands, jurisdictional. A wetland subject to rules and regulations identified in Section 404 of the U.S. Clean Water Act and Oregon's Fill and Removal Statute. Woohoo! Wire, let's see, wrecking yard, see junkyard. Yard, any open space on the same lot with a building or group of buildings which is unoccupied and unobstructed by any structure from the ground upward to the sky, other than by landscaping or a permitted fence, and except for the projections as permitted in this development code. 1. Yard, corner lot. The front yard is adjacent to the shortest lot line along a street. The rear yard is opposite the front yard. The street side yard is adjacent to the longest lot line along a street. The side yard is opposite the street side yard. 2. Exterior yard, a yard area abutting a street right-of-way created by a setback line. 3. Front yard, a yard between the side lot lines and measured horizontally at right angles to the front lot line from the front lot line to the nearest point of a building. Any yard meeting this definition and abutting on a street other than an alley shall be considered a front yard. 4. Yard, front inset. A yard on a flag lot or a similarly configured lot paralleling the street and at the rear of another lot. 5, interior yard. A yard area adjacent to a property line created by a setback line that may be either a side yard or rear yard abutting another property. 6, rear yard. A yard opposite the front yard. 7, side yard. A yard that is not a front yard or rear yard. 8, street facing side yard. An exterior side yard facing a street that is not a front yard. For corner lots, usually the largest street facing dimension of the property. 0 lot line subdivision or partition. A type of residential subdivision or partition utilizing 0 lot lines between dwelling units and providing for individual ownership of each lot. 0 setback. A property line having no setback therefrom, permitting building locations on the property line and may equally divide a common wall between buildings on adjacent properties. That brings us to the end of the definitions. End of Article 1. So it is 8:07, 8:08. We have been going our goal has been no more than 2-hour meetings, so we do have another 20 or so minutes. We can go on to Article 2, but I also wanted to talk about meeting times. So we can do either one at this point. It's,
I think
strong feelings on that.
meeting times would probably be a good subject to broach at this time.
Okay. So all of you should have received some email from me, and some of us have talked directly. We currently meet the first and third Mondays at 6:30. That is completely within your right to change or modify as needed to suit yourselves. There is no code that the city has that requires a specific day or time. The code just says we have to meet at least monthly. So Commissioner Korn is going through a change in his work schedule, which would prevent him coming at this time. And I believe the only evening that would really work would be Thursday evening in that case. And so we kind of talked, I sent out the email to kind of talk about what everybody else can do. Obviously, we don't want to adapt everything for one person just to lose someone else. So we want to make sure that we have a time that works for as many of you as possible. But from what I gathered, the only feedback I've got that had an issue with Thursdays was, I believe, Commissioner Melcher, on the third Thursday, you have a 5:30 meeting currently that happens. So if we were going to do a Thursday, we would either want to do the first and third and make sure that the meeting time was one that you could still get to, or we would be looking at different weeks. The problem with different weeks is it makes it more difficult for staff because the city council meetings are on the second and fourth week of the month. And so it's not ideal to move to the second and fourth week, but it's not impossible. So I wanted to get a discussion going of what is reasonable, what you guys can do. Commissioner Melcher, I meant to talk with you previously and to find out more about your meeting. And so maybe if you wouldn't mind, what kind of flexibility do you have around that meeting? Is it possible for a later meeting that same night?
I could probably be late. There are certain times during the year where those meetings will be longer. Right now, it's for the Sweet Home Alumni. It's for the Sweet Home Alumni Foundation Board, which I am a member of. We meet the third Thursday of each month. Right now, it's reviewing scholarship applications, so the May meeting is longer. We do have June, July, and August off, so those third Thursdays would fit just fine. During October, November, we are planning for the annual Christmas tree auction, which is the first weekend in December. So December 3rd Thursday would work as long as it's not on the holiday, but, so, but the October, November could be busier where I might not be able to make a Thursday meeting
Mhm.
for planning commission. But are these third Thursdays mostly just like overflow, reviewing development code, and may not always be meeting on a third Thursday?
That's a good point. We've only recently started this second meeting of the month business, and it was solely for the purpose of the development code. It could be that in the future we'll have so much development that we'll have to meet twice a month, but
Right,
I have a hard time seeing that as being likely.
right.
Certainly we have a lot of development going on right now, but most of it fits within our code and doesn't require any additional decisions. So there's that as well.
And if there were going to be an issue with having a quorum,
Mhm.
I would probably leave my previous meeting early enough to get here to constitute a quorum if you
Mhm.
needed it.
Okay.
Otherwise, I could probably sneak in.
Okay. So it sounds like the first and third Thursdays would work in that case, just that we'd have to make some accommodations for you every once in a while, or just excuse your
Occasionally.
absence occasionally. Any other thoughts on, speaking for Commissioner Wolfius, he emailed me back and said that he didn't have a problem with moving
Yeah.
to Thursdays if that is.
I don't see anything other than historically, I mean, people in the community would know that we were the first and third Monday. So, but if we're only really addressing the people that are applying, then they will have ample
Mhm.
time to plan.
Right.
And we're still considering 6:30 as the time
Mhm.
for the meeting. at
And
the same
certainly
time.
that's adaptable as well. I know that in the past, I don't know if this body, I know that the city council in the past met at 7 and then moved back to 6:30. And that was fine. And so we've had various meetings with the city that have ranged from 5 o'clock special meetings to 6 o'clock, 6:30. We're certainly flexible on that as well. It sounds like moving earlier would probably be more of a burden on that third Thursday for Commissioner Melcher if she was trying to make
I do
both
like
meetings.
earlier
Um,
for the first Monday
Yeah.
or first Thursday.
For consistency's sake, I would try to stick with the same meeting start time for all meetings, but we don't have to. We're certainly open to that.
Well, me personally, I'm impartial to date and time at this time.
Okay.
Based on what we've talked about.
Commissioner Corn,
Yeah, if we can move to Thursdays, then I would love to stay involved.
okay. Commissioner Stevens, any thoughts?
Yeah, Thursday works for me because I'd hate to lose Commissioner Corn to start with.
I agree.
Yeah, and just on that note, Commissioner Lohman was recently appointed by the city council. He had applied back when there was the vacancy when Commissioner Unger left and Commissioner Gatchell left, and Commissioner Goebel was assigned instead. But then this last time we didn't get any responses to our calls for applicants, and so he was appointed from that previous search.
I can't believe more people don't want a free tedious job. I mean, come on.
It's frustrating. The thing that frustrates me the most actually is that I talk to people who are interested, but they live outside of city limits, and so they're not able to. And so that's the main problem is there's folks that could serve and or would be willing to serve, but they just live in the wrong spot.
So we need to push out our UGB.
Unfortunately, we can't. That's not one of those accepted reasons to expand your urban growth boundary.
It's always there.
I'd love to tell the state that we need to expand simply so we can have more access to people to serve on the planning commission.
Yeah.
Well, in that case, I mean, it sounds like the consensus is fine with moving to the first and third Thursdays at the same time, or do you prefer a different time, 6:30 or?
Time kind of works for me. I mean, I don't mind going a little earlier, but then again, I don't want to.
It'll just be the one. So I have June, July, August.
Yeah.
Those are off, and if we're doing the development code,
Mm-hmm.
and we likely won't have Thursday meetings
I-
the rest of the year.
Oh, you mean the third Thursday?
meeting for
Yeah.
The rest of the year.
Yeah. In all likelihood, this process will probably continue at least till the end of the year for the development code, is my guess. Because I think the definitions are actually the easy part. So you just have to read them and we don't have very many comments, but other things we may have more comments.
And we've already got a meeting scheduled for June 7th, so we can't really change that.
If we have,
Yeah, I was gonna bring that up. So I've already noticed for June 7th, the first weekend change would be July.
okay.
Yeah.
Just because June is already coming up. And so what I can do is I can create a calendar and then give it to you guys at the next meeting of what those dates would be.
What about the second meeting in June? So June 7th would be a Monday.
We don't, this is one of the very few times that we've had an actual public hearing for a notice other
Yeah.
than the code for the second one. So the second Thursday, we could probably do that.
Or
too, so-
the third Thursday.
I think it's gonna take me forever to get.
Yeah.
So the
Third
second meeting of the
Thursday.
month in June could be on the
Yeah.
Thursday.
The third Thursday would be the 17th, so 10 days after the first one.
So it's just that first one that we can't change because it's already been noticed. So I will put a calendar together and get it sent out like the other ones, so you guys all have that. It'll help me remember it's Thursday. I'm still gonna call it Monday, but
Yeah.
it'll take me a little while, but I will get those calendars out to you.
Okay, so in that case, what I'm understanding is that then on June 7th, we will hold our Monday meeting. And then starting the third week of June, on the third Thursday, we will have the
First
other
Thursday.
meeting of June, which would, at this point, the only thing on the agenda and the only thing we want to have on the agenda is more development code review. So that would make it the 17th. So in effect, it would be the following week, even though that's just part of the transition.
Yeah, I mean, at least we get a week and a half between.
Right.
Not
The other issue that this kind of solves actually is that
the holidays.
the first Monday of July was the 5th of July. The 4th of July is Sunday, and so the 5th of July is the day off for those who get a holiday off. And so City Hall is actually going to be closed on the 5th of July, which means usually in those circumstances, we don't have our first planning commission meeting and we put it off to the second. But in this case, July 5th, so that would make,
July 1st.
well, the first Thursday in July would be July 1st.
Right.
And then July 15th would be the second Thursday. And so it would allow us to have those two meetings without any interruption by a holiday.
And I think it also corrects Labor Day also, because Labor Day, we always had to switch that
Yeah.
too, so I think it corrects that.
True. True. So just to be clear, we're looking at June 7th being the next meeting. The following meeting after that would be June 17th. And then getting on the first and third Thursday of the month. So that would be July 1st and July 15th for July. And then August 5th and August 19th for August. That clear? All right. Do we need to actually have a vote on that?
Let's just do it to be safe.
To be safe, I think it'd be good to have an actual official vote. That way I can inform the council and inform the city manager that you've changed times.
You guys ready? I'll do a roll call vote.
Yep, so.
Someone need to make a motion.
Yeah, you need a motion in a second. So if there's anybody who makes a motion to shift our public meeting times to the first and third Thursday of the month, starting with the third Thursday of June.
So moved.
I second.
All right, we'll turn over to Angela for a roll call vote.
You guys are ahead of me. Hold on. All right, Commissioner Journey.
Aye.
Commissioner Parker,
Aye.
Commissioner Melcher,
Aye.
Commissioner Corn,
Aye.
Commissioner Stevens.
Aye.
All right, that leaves us.
Okay, thank you. So we will get things shifted over, and my wife will actually be happy about that because she likes having me home on Monday evenings.
Yeah. So, any other business that we need to speak of before entertaining?
That's- That's all we've got. I mean, we've got, so, yeah, we can start the next, the next meeting, we have a pretty full agenda, do we, on June 7th?
Yeah. The continuation of the foothills.
I think we only have one right now, maybe two. If there's a conditional use. The coffee.
Oh,
I think, yeah, I think.
So-
we
I was
only
gonna
have
ask
one.
about that.
At the
after.
last meeting, you continued that once the foothill subdivision
Subdivision.
to June 7th. And so we will have that listed on the agenda, but I have my doubts that we will get anything
In by
from
then.
them in by then. Now,
Okay.
We met them with them today.
we met with them
Oh.
today, so they're actually just barely getting started with making adjustments. The good thing is that whatever they bring to us, it's just we have to have it ready by the meeting and ready for you to see previous to the meeting. So they can get something to us by the Friday before or something like that, and we can it'll still make it into that.
So if people show up on the June 7th meeting looking for that,
Mhm.
we will have a date to inform them.
Right. If things get to us in time, we can still consider that whatever they submit to us. If they don't, which I think is more likely, then it would be, we would want to continue that again to the following meeting, which
In July.
probably
that would be-
the July 1st meeting.
Yeah, and so we have 120 days to process an application. And so, and I've already informed them that July is going to be kind of the last ditch effort to get it into you guys, and then it'll have to be withdrawn if they're not ready, and we'd have to start over because we can't go any farther. You have to account for not only time for you all to deliberate and have a public notice, but there's also the appeal period time that has to fit in it there. So
so they'll resubmit things and we'll have to have basically a modified staff report. But essentially we'll do as much, we'll probably limit the changes to whatever changes they're proposing. And so it'll be more a modification of the previous staff report to fit what they submit to us. So hopefully it won't involve a ton of work, but we'll try to get it to you as fast as we can. I think it's unlikely that the June 7th meeting will actually have anything on that, but in which case you'll open the public hearing and then immediately continue it to probably the July 1st meeting.
Okay. All right, with that, we move to adjourn our planning commission meeting at 8:26.
Thank you very much.
Hey, so I noticed that Coffee Hut was building a thing and now they're not.
Yeah.
Is it too big of a thing, or is it because it was a thing that was commercial without a
It
permit?
depends on who you ask.
Yeah.
There was some
That's a key
dispute and they were unhappy because there was some miscommunication and we don't know exactly how that miscommunication happened or who said what. It's kind of a he or she said situation. They thought that they were okay to build that size without a
It's pretty
permit.
full.
Because there's a certain size shed that you can build without a permit. 200 square feet in the residential, in a commercial zone, it's 120 square feet. And so what they built would have been fine in a residential area, but would have required a permit. And we said, yeah, you just need to apply for a permit. But they were frustrated and upset by how the process went. We tried to work with them as best as we could and made it clear that that was still possible and it wasn't that expensive of a permit. But it did make them, and I think there was some other issues that it brought up with the property owner and the business to talk about what would work best. I think it caused them to reflect a bit. And so I don't know that that hiccup was the only reason for them to make that decision, but it might have been. So I'm really not sure what made them give up on it that quickly. So they did talk about they said they were looking at the possibility of expanding the footprint of the actual building to make it easier for their staff, but they haven't applied for that either. So I'm not sure. They haven't really. They did the last time I talked to her. She was civil and nice, but she didn't really. It was clear that she didn't want to tell me much. So. We have not received beyond there was a fence permit application for that fence that they put up, but there was nothing else. And so I don't know, I haven't, and for the old Skyline restaurant, and I tried to get a hold of the owners because I understand it's the folks who own T2. Right. And I haven't ever been able to talk to them. I left messages just frankly, just wanting to know what we could do to assist and make them aware of our facade grant program and just kind of find out more about what they have in mind, but they haven't responded to my inquiries, which is on. It could be. Well, what I find is that when you're reaching out to somebody because they're a friend or they're a colleague or a fellow business or something like that, it's one thing. When it's a government agency calling out to you, people are less willing to share. Yeah, I mean, certainly tell them my main reason for wanting to talk is just from an economic development standpoint and not a regulation standpoint. You know, we're just interested in knowing what ideas people have and make sure that we can support that however we can. But I can't make people talk to me. I tried that with business licenses. It didn't work. Yeah. No, we're looking at more of a voluntary a thing that we might do, but we'll see.
And if you pitch it with the intent that, hey, look, both of the individuals